My name is Dr. Lamikanra, and I am the Executive Director for Blazing Trails International. We are a service provider for people with special needs, but I also have a history of being a college professor. I've been tenured. I've worked throughout the system, and my field of study has been international development, technology, and social change.
Hi everybody, good morning. I'm Dr. Cassandra Shepard. I'm an assistant professor over at Xavier University. I'm in their Department of African American and Diaspora Studies. I also am the CEO of my mom's hair product company. She started our company in 1971, and we do all natural ingredient beauty products. And she was a pharmacist. So the company is Honeydew Products. We're on Instagram. It's Honeydew Products. Thank you.
Good morning and hello everyone. My name is Elaine Chambers. I am a Microsoft account executive currently, and also the executive and founder of Tech Engagement and Research Institute. As a scholar, I focus at the intersection of technology and healthcare to drive better healthcare outcomes. So where tech meets healthcare, that's my space, starting with digital literacy on up to digital literacy in healthcare.
Hello everyone, I'm Tia Suggs. I work at Dillard University Center for Racial Justice as the project manager, and I'm also a women's health advocate with Planned Parenthood. So I like working with the youth, working in social justice spaces, and I love history.
Well, welcome panel, and I have the privilege of knowing each of these women personally, and so I know the drive each of them have. So I'm going to start with the first question. And I'll start with Dr. Perry's first question.
Okay.
What does unstoppable mean to you personally, and how does the definition change over the course of your career?
Oh, that is a very good question. So when I think of unstoppable, I think of the fact that as a African American woman, many times we are placed in different positions, right? So we think about the intersectionality, right? Patricia Hill Collins, right? And so when I think of unstoppable, I think of the fact that despite barriers and systemic barriers that are happening, we are still able to do what is necessary, not only for ourselves, but for the next generation, right? To prepare women for the workforce, not just educationally, but as individuals as well. So that's unstoppable. What was the second question?
And how does it help you evolve during your career?
So throughout my career, the way that has evolved is because I see and I have been mentored by what I call unstoppable women, right? And some of you are in this room today. And so throughout my academic career, these individuals have mentored me and helped shape how I am able to work in the field that I'm working in. As a professor and as a person who writes grants, right? It is a dual role that I have to do. And sometimes that can be a little bit challenging because at the same time, you're still trying to go up the academic ladder. And so there are barriers that we face. Now, I'm also a parent. I'm divorced and I have two beautiful daughters. So in that regard, that is unstoppable, right? so facing those challenges, and then having to do the challenges at home that are necessary, and then you still have the battles in the workforce that you must challenge, especially if you're working at a historic college institution. And so I tell my young people, mentorship is so important. And I think that is what has helped shape me and the differences that I see along the way. But it's important to not just have mentors, but to listen and to be patient. You got to be patient with mentors, right? You got to be patient and make sure you do exactly what's
needed.
I think if I had to put a definition to unstoppable, it would be being provided the tangible resources in order to succeed. And it has evolved a lot over my career. I'm almost a decade into being an epidemiologist. But as many fancy titles as I hold, I'm also a formerly incarcerated and formerly homeless woman. I come from 4 generations of formerly incarcerated women, to the point that my birth mother gave me away the day that I was born to total strangers. And I think after surveying her life, she realized that something had to be different with me, her fifth and final child. And so that in and of itself, her decision to give me away, knowing that I would never know who she was until I was much older, and never know the lineage that I came from, was an attempt by her to give me the tangible resources that I needed to succeed. And so I think in that same regard, how that has evolved over my career is a sort of survivor's guilt in a way that has morphed into a call of duty for women. And so how I navigate that is ensuring that I am giving women the tangible resources that they need to succeed. I think that when we talk about things like mentorship, because I'm so often thrust with that title of a mentor and things of that nature, I do sometimes consider it a dirty word because we look at mentorship as a messianic venture. We feel as though that one person and their influence in your life, as powerful as it may be, is all that you need. But I exist as one of millions of women who did not have those tangible resources. You can have all the support and the hugs and the examples that you need, but if you can't feed yourself, and if that rent is still due, then you're limited in that regard. And so that ideology has colored the entirety of what my organization is about. I'm paying for the tuitions of roughly 60 women nationwide who are just like me. I'm paying for the rents and mortgages of formerly incarcerated pregnant women and mothers. I am providing menstrual products to 12,000 plus women incarcerated in this nation because women have to be given the tangible means to succeed. And that is what makes you unstoppable.
I need to move, because I'm sitting too close. All right. So, unstoppable means to me the persistence of vision. So early in my career, when I was still navigating the college world, the rigors of academia I used to establish new programs. Like when I first got to West Virginia, I established the Middle States African Studies Association. And today, I am the executive director for Blazing Trails, and it has evolved into a mission of sustainable advocacy, ensuring that neurodivergent individuals have the vocational support and life skills needed to thrive regardless of societal limitations. It is a shift from personal achievement to creating systemic pathways for others. So I do a lot of work in autism, spectrum disorder, here in America and abroad. I do workshops, and I try to convince parents that it's okay that your child, this is how he is. And so let's deal with the here and now, not anything in the past or anything in the future. Let's move them so that they can live and lead a meaningful life.
Yeah. So I would say for me, being unstoppable is much like the same definition of these ladies on the panel. I would go ahead and say that I come from a family of people who are unstoppable. We're extremely determined about whatever the idea we get. My mom would say we get possessed by ideas. We don't have them, right? And so I think that for me then, being unstoppable over time has meant that I have to learn when to rest and when not to do things, and I feel like I'm still learning the art of that, especially to not get burned out, or even if I get burned out, to know when to stop. So it's like being unstoppable, but maybe restable. Maybe take intermissions, right? And so I feel like I've been confronted with a lot of different times in my life where I've pressured through, gone through, broke through a wall, even down to just receiving my PhD. I've been confronted with situations where people ask oh, you never thought about quitting? And I was like, quitting? It never even occurred to me that was even a choice. I knew I had to do it. I said I would. I'm doing it. That's it. But knowing then when to take those pauses and breaks is the thing that I'm learning.
Sure. So for me, I'm in corporate America, and when I think about unstoppable, I echo all the sentiments of the sisters that have spoken before me, and especially self-care. That is critical for those of us who are really determined. And to be a Black female today, right, a female of color, it is critical that we do self-care, not only mentally, but physically as well. And so for me, when I think about unstoppable, I reflect upon those who came before me. Just as recent as my grandmother, she lived to be 99 and a half. She was unstoppable. She bore 10 children, right? And she ran a 300-acre farm like it was corporate America. She ran that, and I struggled with 2 children, right, as a working mother. So when I think about unstoppable, for me, initially it was working hard, putting in the hours and doing everything you could do possibly within this 24-hour window you were given. But what I've learned over time is to work smarter, right? And what does that mean? That means tapping into mentors, and to your point around Messiah, I mean, we think about, when people think about a mentor, sometimes we can think this mentor is going to be an end-all, be-all. I absolutely love mentoring because I see myself as a gateway, not just a sole answer to your problems, but that gateway to connect you to my network, right? Because that has fueled me. I've had so many people seed into my life. Come here, baby, let me talk to you. From the sister at the church who said, let me put a little something in your ear. Don't wear those diamond shapes, those earrings that you wore. They were thunderbolts. She said, that's inappropriate. From that to sisters in corporate America and brothers that pull me aside and say, hey, let me share something with you. And I just encourage everyone, when you think about unstoppable, yes, get out there, get it. But networking is absolutely critical, right? It's critical to your success. And to know when to stop, because those of us who go, we go hard in the paint, right? And we suffer health issues. And for me, I'll just add, I have solved global problems all over the world, okay? I've been to all kind of countries solving issues. But for me, it hits hard when I see my people suffer because they're not enabled on how to use technology to have better outcomes. So for me, that's why I established my nonprofit. It's called Tech Engagement and Research Institute, because we need a channel to understand what's out there. We all talk about AI and people want to pump out papers with AI, but guess what? AI is critical in our healthcare, and it's being used today. You may or may not know it, but you are a product of AI and research. So I am and want to be used as a person in that space to help my people better understand how they can tap in and have better health outcomes from technology.
I definitely agree with what everyone said as well with mentorship and self-care. Dr. Schwartz, I love self-care. I feel like it's very important to rest, to, just give your time space to process all that information. Because when I was in school, I was just staying up all night, reading all night, and none of it was sinking in. So I stayed up again doing the same thing. So I realized early on, the importance of taking a break, the importance of just giving your body time to readjust as well, because there's other things going on top of school that you also have to deal with, and knowing how to prioritize and, organize those things. And also, once I started working, it was very different going from being in school to having a full-time salary job. So it was just that adjustment, and also being that I'm kind of the youngest person at my job. So a lot of times I was the student or the assistant person where I was working here. So just adjusting to that kind of feedback when it's I'm supposed to be here, I'm doing my job, so just kind of not allowing other people to stress you out. And even with the mentorship, there's people who want to help, and there's people who kind of want to gatekeep and hold back. And that was another thing to learn, because I was used to, once I see a Black woman, it's just home, safety. And it's some people do have a pushback or want to hold back. But there's so many women I've worked with who have opened so many doors for me or introduced me to different things, resources, or I'll just be mentioning something and they're like, oh wait, they'll call me back later, months later, and I remember you said this, so they send me things or introduce me to other people aligned with what I'm doing. So it's definitely worth connecting, but also knowing who you're connecting.
All right, next question, I'm gonna turn to Gabrielle to answer this question. And I was thinking about them, when I write these questions, I was thinking about myself. And so, the second question is, can you share the moment when you realized that you were in a position to lead change?
I do think I remember the exact moment, to be honest. So
Did you feel ready to?
That answer is absolutely not. I mentioned before, I'm an epidemiologist, and so I graduated from Tulane School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine, and I graduated directly into the pandemic. I was a few months shy of it. And so here I was seeing my textbooks come to life in a time that was extremely vulnerable. And so the entire public health infrastructure moved to ensure that we were moving as one band and one sound. And I appreciate the fact that my job was, and still is to this day, making sure that they were fostering talent and making sure that they were making all of us feel as safe and as, I guess you can say, adjusted as possible. And so it became a very lucrative time in my career. I was very young, and it was my first, as I told my mama, my first big girl job. And yet I was so, I really can't stress enough how the sleepless nights that I had, not because of the destruction and stuff that we were witnessing, but because I was in my dream career. This is what I love to do. It's a joy for me to wake up every day and go to work, and a lot of people cannot say that. And so I was so acutely aware that as a formerly incarcerated woman, a formerly homeless woman, that my story, the way my story had ended, is an anomaly that's not happening to a lot of people. And I was overcome with so much, what my therapist calls survivor's guilt, that I just could not sleep at night. And so I ended up going on Twitter and just putting an all call out to women who were just like me, who were formerly incarcerated like me, and just giving women money out of my savings account from my first promotion at work. And I wanted to make sure that they were women who had recently finished their education, who were trying to finish their education like me, and just if I could offer them something. And so the response to that was massive. It was more than my direct messages online could handle. It was just too much. And so I reached out to an acquaintance who has now become the board chair of my organization to make a website for me, to make something that I could facilitate these women coming to me. And so after that was over, she said to me, she was like, this could really be something. We could really do something with this. To which I had to be thoroughly convinced. And so even though I did not feel ready, I was also in that same survivor's guilt overcome with a lot of anger. I really was. There is no national narrative around women's incarceration. There is no national narrative around it. There's nothing, when we think about incarceration, we think of men as who we constantly think of. And that lack of insight has real tangible consequences. Because I always tell people, for every man who is incarcerated, there's a grandmother at the church selling fish plates for his bail. There's a mother who is writing to the state parole board to get him out. There's a girlfriend or a wife bringing the kids up there to visit. There is nothing like that at the women's group. Visitation day is very empty, if anyone shows up at all. For every university like Loyola, or every company, major corporation like Microsoft or Google who are coming into the prisons and recruiting, they're bypassing the women entirely. They don't think of that. And so the first thing that I felt was just this, Toni Morrison calls it anger is a surging of worth. And I really wanted people to understand who these women were and that they were worthy of something. And so I learned from Issa Rae that you have to network across as opposed to up. I couldn't find anybody in a position of power who cared about these women the way that I cared about them. And I had been told to my face that what I was trying to establish, especially in the shadow of the movement for Black Lives, was directly taking away from men. And was distracting, is what the word they use, distracting from the movement for Black Lives for men. And so I wanted to make sure that I built something solely for women. And so now here we are, 100,000 people strong in terms of our network. And I learned that if you build it, they really will come. And so we have been supported by so many people. We thank God for Miss Beyonce Knowles Carter and the Be Good Foundation. We thank God for Drew Holiday and the NBA. We thank God for all the people who have come along on this journey with us, who are angry when we are angry, and who grieve when we grieve for these women that we're trying to humanize and advocate for. And so even to this day, I still get nervous about these things, I don't always feel ready. I knew that if I just educated people about what this actually was, if I gave them a vision and a voice, especially in myself, because for a lot of people, despite the fact that women are the fastest growing group of incarcerated people in this country, they're twice as likely to be homeless after release than men. They're twice as likely to be underemployed or unemployed than men. We don't have anyone talking about that. And so for a lot of people, I end up being their first iteration, their first introduction to this issue. And so even though I did not feel ready, I felt as though I owed it to these women, to my mother's memory, to make sure that if I was going to be the first person that they were encountering, I had to make it count.
So I have several moments that I can share with you, but I'm going to share one of my more recent roles when I became the lead consultant for the Orange Ribbon Initiative, which was in Lagos, Nigeria. And we were tasked with bridging a gap between healthcare education and public policy in West Africa. And so I was given an opportunity to convene a conference with over 600 parents or experts on the topic of autism awareness. And so we convened the autism symposium. And this was a big challenge because a lot of people thought that autism was a new disease, a new condition, and it wasn't. It's been around, it's just been undiagnosed. And I realized at this point that my background in international ed policy actually mattered when we were building a unique framework necessary to align local interventions with global standards. And even tonight, I've actually asked my roommate to wake me up at 12:30 a.m. because I'm on a World Health Organization grant with the University of Nigeria, in which we have this money. They have the money. I'm like the consultant on autism and how to deal with teletherapy, because you have a lot of people that we suspect that have autism in Nigeria, but we don't have a way of, through the grant, we will have a way for those that participate to come up with an actual diagnosis for them. We are suspicious of certain behaviors that this may be autism, but we don't know for sure. I know for sure. But we're going to prove it with this grant, and we're going to offer teletherapy, but we don't have enough practitioners in Nigeria to do so, or those that are willing to do it for the small amount of money that the grant is willing to pay. So I'm tasked with that, and I've had to use my American contacts for that. And the problem is that we're meeting at 1 a.m. Our time, and then Nigeria's time is different. And another time that I was challenged like that was when I moved because of Miss Katrina. Y'all remember Katrina, right? And how it destroyed New Orleans. And I had to leave. I used to be a professor with Professor Ashraf at SUNO. And so once we got hit, I just got hit by the hurricane. We moved to Texas. And when I got to Texas, it was almost like my credentialing didn't matter in Texas because I was from New Orleans. And they discounted me, and I felt so low, that I went over to TCU, and I said, well, I'd like to get in a PhD program at Texas Christian University because they had one of the experts on the transatlantic slave trade. And I sat in his office, and he was talking down to me like I was nobody, and like I was nothing. Then I thought about it. I said, I got a PhD already. I got a PhD from a school that actually mattered. Iowa State University School of Science and Technology, and that trumps anything that Texas has going on. And I rose up out of there, and I started the next day, Blazing Trails International, which has given me a platform in which to advocate for neurodivergent individuals.
So I'm going to share two of mine. I'll share it quickly, but when you talked about Katrina, so my scholarship is on Hurricane Katrina and disaster recovery in New Orleans. And my questions are about how, if people say that colonialism is still an occurrence, how does colonialism shape our rebuilding process? And how has it shaped how we wound up interacting with COVID-19 and how the pandemic plays out inside the city? And so I would argue that maybe from forging my book, and I brought a little copy just to show, maybe from my book, then I feel like I'm leading a change in terms of talking about colonial impact and the way that it's still with us in the city. And this book comes from a longer dissertation. When I wrote my dissertation, it was 600 pages. And so this is just like a part of it. The other part is about decolonization. And so it's thinking about how to undo colonial ties on the city and how it is that we can have a more prosperous way of being able to live moving forward, more robust, less tied with these colonial issues, capitalism, racism, the isms. The isms, right? Militarism, the isms. Okay. Environmental racism, the isms. All right. Okay, so I would argue that's one. Just through my scholarship, I try to make sure that I'm on a cutting edge. And then additionally, for my hair product company or our beauty product company, my mom, like I said, she started us in '71, and in 2022 she passed away. And so I had to then step up to then be the lead. So you saw me when I was like, well, I'm the CEO, I'm the CEO, like just like saying it, right? Because it's almost like a change in leadership, and then having to make sure that I fulfill the things that she envisioned, but then also do it inside of this changing world. Like the ways that she thought about marketing, well, maybe those aren't the same ways that we would do marketing today, or maybe it's a nice hybrid. So I think that those are just two small examples of the way that I see myself leading change.
Hi, so for me, I'll reflect upon corporate, and then I'll move into this space where my heart lies, right? So from a corporate standpoint, coming into corporate America, I was typically the only Black, only female in the room, right? So it was predominantly white male in the room. So it was very interesting. Came out of HBCU, Southern University, shaking in my boots when I got to IBM, thinking, oh my God, am I ready, right? And so I showed up for an internship. I was dressed to the nine, working for a Black female. She said, you look good. Now we got to seal the rest of the deal, right? As far as my intellect. And so I'm working shoulder to shoulder with white males from all of the elite schools, right? And so this is a test, right? So for me, I said, okay, I know I can think, right? And I would just stress critical thinking is key. You got to be able to communicate, and you need critical thinking skills, and that alone will save your behind from a whole lot of issues, right? And so for me, being the only Black, being the only female in the room, a lot of times they wanted me to take the notes. This is before AI, etc. But what I found was they weren't comfortable speaking publicly. So thankfully to my home church, I was secretary of the Sunday school. So I knew how to get up and speak, right? And so in times like when you're unsure, you're not sure how to handle situations, you gotta go back to your roots. You gotta call on some things, right? And so for me, I was still shaking in my boots because I'm talking technical topics, right? I'm talking the kernel of systems. So I leaned on what my professors put in me in HBCU. They pushed us, right? And they said, you will do, right? And you're going to do. And on your feet and let's have it, right? It was tough, but it was tough love, and I appreciate that. And from doing that, I was able to stand, not just stand amongst, but stand out amongst. Yes. All these Harvard grads and all these other PWIs, etc., because I was able to stand on my feet and articulate whatever the technical issue was. And in doing that, I rose in leadership. People said, oh my God, you're amazing. I didn't think I was amazing, but I was using the skills that I had. So don't sleep on the skills that you have. But I would ask anyone in the room, sharpen your critical thinking skills. Because if you know how to solve problems, solving the problem may be tapping into others who can help you solve that problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? That's critically thinking about things. As you use AI, use it effectively. That's a tool, right? And no one can outthink you. Don't belittle yourself as a human being and your ability to think. Just recently in graduate school, me and a colleague of mine, he was in my cohort. The teacher was saying we could use our laptops, right? So we're using our laptops say we're writing an essay. He would be outside the room, literally, Elaine, calling my name, saying, what's taking you so long? Aren't you using AI? I said, absolutely. He said, well, what took you so long? I said, AI is a tool. I am bringing all of the input into this tool. AI doesn't appreciate context of whatever your situation is, a problem that you're attempting to solve. So AI didn't have the context of who that professor was, how that professor liked his output to be given, what context, what were the notes that were given in that context. So he just ran it, hey, write me an essay on X. I'm in there like, no, I'm contextualizing it to the particular situation, right? And that is critical. Now that's use of an AI tool, but for me in corporate, I just have to think, you gotta think, how do you solve problems, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions. You have to form allegiances with others. That is, you cannot do it alone, right? So for me, when I've been faced with a lot of challenges, and one in particular, and I'll wrap up, I was asked to do a project. They said, you can do it. I'm shaking in my boots like, no, I don't want to do it. Because what I was doing at that time was getting our software translated to 13 different languages. I'd never done that before. But people said, oh, you can do it. And I said, nah, they're trying to set me up, or what is this? But I took it as, I said, okay, I'm going to rise to the occasion. And in rising to the occasion, I did it, and I made it happen. I met with 13 people from 13 different countries that spoke these individual languages. We tested the product out in their languages, and it worked, right? So what I will tell you is when faced with any particular change, dig deep, know that you can do it, build some allegiances, do your homework, right? And just go for it. Because guess what? Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody gets it right the first time. So be okay with that, right? And reach out for help. So.
Just going back on the AI, going back to the networking conferences, working at this job, I've been able to go to many conferences, and I really get a lot of feedback and advice from the people that are speaking, because with the AI advice, they said that you use it to not to create your business, but to help you get ideas, or you're really using it, like she said, as a tool, but you don't go into AI saying make this and giving it very little input. Because even when you type in our Center for Racial Justice, it says that a judge that we never met found it. So it's definitely, it just goes with what makes sense. So it is very important with AI, that we are using our ideas and letting it organize and style it up, but you're definitely wanting to input as much of your ideas and thoughts, because it is just throwing things, pulling things. I think it thought that would make sense if a judge. So it's it really does matter. And that advice has really stuck with me. And then going back to the leading for change, I didn't really know where I was gonna go after college. I was a broadcast major from UL. I didn't go to Dillard, but it was very confusing as to my next steps, because right after that was COVID. I had so many other ideas I wanted, so I had to learn how to pivot with every move I made, pretty much, because COVID and the hurricane. So 2 different battles. And going back to mentorship, I reached out to one of my mentors because I needed a job. I was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to apply. I'm really trying to start over, because broadcasting wasn't what I thought it was either. They were paying a lot less than what I was making working at a hotel with no degree. So it was I had to keep changing up. All 2020 pretty much to 2021, 22, I was changing things up. So when I called her, she reached out about a job. I had no idea how to be a project manager. I was just my degree did align with the things that the center does, but it wasn't the title I was expecting. So I was like, okay, I'll try it out, but I don't really know. And it ended up being heaven sent. I really love this job. I love the work that I do. And feeling I belong and I have this title was like a very different thing too, because a lot of the students I work with are close to my age. So it was like this, but they actually would come to me and tell me that I really helped them or been a mentor, role model to them in ways that I didn't see in myself yet. So I feel like having my students really bond with me, talk with me, they really boosted me up to take on this role more than ever. Because now I feel the eyes on me, so it's different.
Yeah, Dr. Harrigan.
Yes, I really like that question because when I think about this, it reminds me of the scripture that says, many are called, but few are chosen. And so with that scripture, I learned that it's not necessarily about favoritism, but it's about that everybody is given opportunity. But it is those who are willing and ready, right, to do what they have been asked to do. And so when I think of it in that particular perspective, I don't really know when the moment was that I recognized that I was a leader. Most of the opportunities I had, I was willing and walked into them. However, I do remember being in a class of 300 students for the first time at Southern Illinois University as the professor. And I was in the grad program working on my doctorate degree. And it was at that moment I said, oh my God, I have to lead these students somewhere. And so as I reflect back on the fact that God called me into the teaching area, I realized that it was a calling and that it is my responsibility to be willing, right? And make sure that I study, right? And that I'm ready and prepared to do what is necessary to step into the leadership role. So that is how I feel about that. I think many a times we are born with these leadership abilities, but do we accept the responsibility that comes with them? And by accepting the responsibility, that means that we are prepared, right? And we are making sure that we're doing what's necessary to fulfill that role for ourselves and the generation that we're leading.
All right, I'm going to combine two questions. Who are the women or allies that have shaped you? Maybe combine that with mentorship. I know that you brought that up. Combine those two questions. I'll start with you, Dr.
Okay, well, my journey's been shaped by some high-level partnerships, like with Jack and Jill, my sorority, Zeta, my biggest sorority incorporated, the Links, and Middle States African Studies Association. And these alliances have provided the platform for me to co-author STEM leadership curriculum and influence global discourse. Additionally, working alongside partners has taught me the power of collaborative leadership in implementing global health standards at a local level. And sometimes I remember telling somebody recently, I said, oh no, sometimes these women organizations should put a bullseye on your back, but you can rise above the bullseye that's been, or the bull, whatever, that's been dropped on you, you know, by staying on your course, you know. And I'm glad to, as being a mentor, you know, I don't mind sharing my network, and I will share with you. And I know that there's this term that says paying it forward. Mm-hmm. And so I've been paying it forward because a lot of people have helped me along the way. And sometimes that help is just unbelievable. Like I remember somebody told me once, sometimes it'll just come to your door. Mm-hmm. And back in, what year was that? 2024. Dr. Esmail came to my door, knocked on my door, and asked me, because I had just had been on maternity leave and I didn't have a job. And he said, would you like a job just like that? Dr. Esmail, this one right there. And I said, yes. And so then I knew that I was in the right place, I was doing the right thing, when these things just like fall, like manna from heaven. They just fall in your lap. And so but you got to be open to receiving that information. And a lot of times we're not. And so I try to remain open. Say, when is it going to happen for me? And then next thing I know, like I was at a low moment back 5 years ago about something that most people would find petty. I didn't think it was petty because it was happening to me. That's right. And I was sitting on a plane. We were going to go visit our son that's in Maine. And I opened up my email, and I've just been appointed to a national committee. And I was like, wow. But I was open. And the minute I got that appointment, I couldn't wait. The plane was about to take off. They were saying, please turn your devices off. Text back saying, thank you, I accept. You know, because you don't know where it's, you know, what's going to happen next. And I used to teach my students when I was in the academy. I would say, y'all need to be open to these things. I remember the Senator Connie Mack, he's a Republican down in Florida, and I was a professor at FIU at that time, called me and said, well, I have 2 internships I'd like to offer your students. Okay. And I went to ask my majors, and my majors were social studies education majors, and then I got to think about it. I don't know if I want, I got to ask. And I went over to my other students that I work with in environmental science. And one of my girls, I'll take it. And then I'm gonna ask my boyfriend if he wants the other one.
Oh, wow.
And so sometimes, you know, you gotta go where you got an open door. And I should tell my students that they don't listen. And education students sometimes are not as open as you would think. But my science ed students, science environmental studies students were very open to accepting these opportunities. And then I had some tickets, Suriname, Airways, back in the 90s. Used to be an airline that flew from Miami International to Suriname, which is in South America. And they said they wanted to establish a connection with a university in Miami, because that's where students from Suriname wanted to live. Young people from Suriname wanted to move to Florida. And I asked these same 2 students, I said, would y'all like to go to Suriname free of charge? And they said, free of charge? I said, yes. We're gonna cover your expenses. And we did, we went to Suriname, then the Suriname Airways and the university came back and said, we wanna have a formal conference. And they sent me 6 tickets. The opportunity for 6 people to come to Suriname, and I asked my colleagues, and they didn't want to go. They don't know where it is on the map, you know. And so I had to ask people from all over America if they wanted to join me in this adventure. And I got my 7 people actually to go. But I'm finding out that a lot of people are not open. They're not open to finding out or learning new things. And so that my thing is be open. Consider all opportunities.
So for me, I'll say, first of all, I think lineage legacy, because I come from some dynamic women. You know, my mom, my grandmother. So I think in terms of lineage and getting that good training helped me to be able to know better who I was before I went out into the world. And so I'm grateful for that. I don't take that as anything but a blessing. And so that would be the first thing for me. And then after that, as I start to think through my work, there are certain women that stick out, and you never know who's gonna be that person. That's what's so interesting. So I think the thing is to be able to be expansive, to always be in a position of like introducing yourself, having networks, just really be out there to support and to pursue whatever the opportunities are. Because you never know what opportunity is going to stick with you and who's going to be the person to come through with something meant specifically for you. You know, my research that now is a book, I started when I was an undergrad at Xavier, and Dr. Wendy Godin had a grant to be able to interview people. And through us working it, we decided, I think it was more, I decided, it's okay, that I wanted to interview people inside the Lower Ninth Ward about their recovery process. And so we did that project. It was like a 6-month project, and then it was over. But then I took that research And I wasn't planning on it. When I went to graduate school, I did reproductive rights for my master's. And then I did reproductive rights for the beginning of my PhD. And when I got into classes, every course class made me then think about what I had done at Xavier.